All right, let's go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone to the 2023 Trustee Convening. I am Dr. Angie Piccioni. I am the Executive Director of the Department of Higher Education and the Executive Director of the Commission on Higher Education. I want to begin by just welcoming you and thanking you for your time and your service to Colorado post-secondary education. It's a critical role that you play. You are members of our public college and university governing boards, and you are truly to be commended for the time and the service that you give to the state of Colorado and to these institutions. Other than the Board of Regents, and I believe that the Community College Board, I think everyone else is appointed. Actually, the Community College Board, I think, is also appointed. So appointed by the governor, and of course, on behalf of the governor, we all thank you for your time and your service. You represent a commitment to an important principle of citizen trusteeship. That is, as citizens, we are collectively entrusted with informed oversight and care of our public institutions and post-secondary education. Your role is important and not to be taken lightly. It represents Colorado's investment in its future and the well-being of all of Colorado's families and communities, as well as its economy and the workforce. Now, of course, we realize that Zoom is not the ideal manner for us to congregate and learn together. However, we certainly do appreciate the convenience that this format provides and the ability to have breakout sessions on important objectives of our ecosystem, of which you play a fundamental part and a significant role. That said, we also look forward to in-person gatherings for future trustee convenings. When it comes to human interactions, there certainly is no substitute. And we know that when we have these trustee meetings, it's often during a time of our climate, if you will, in Colorado, where it's very unpredictable. So at least today, we don't have to manage any of the roads and any of the remaining snow that has already fallen. I want to thank the department staff. They've given beyond the time of their usual projects to ensure that we have a very robust meeting today. As you experienced this morning, I do challenge you to consider a couple of things. One, how will the information that's discussed today, how will it apply to my personal trustee efforts and my institution? How can I help my board and my institution better serve Colorado? And how will this better prepare our students for their futures? So these are some of the guiding questions just to keep in the back of your mind as we go forward. We have some information to share. Of course, that's what part of this convening is for. We are entrusted by the state statutes to hold these trustee convenings. There will be other convenings, and of course, CTN will host other convenings as well. But this one is a requirement on the books, and so we want to make sure that we fulfill our obligation and do our due diligence. So we have some information that we're going to share with you, and hopefully that will help inform some of the decisions that you make as trustees and the caretaking, if you will, of your institutions and our students. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce the 43rd governor of the state of Colorado, my friend, Governor Jared Polis. Although he could not be with us in person, or I should say in Zoom person, I do appreciate that he provided the video message for you. I will say that last night, the governor was a gracious host of quite a few members of the African-American Black community for a Black History Month celebration. I know some of you that are on this call were also there, and so it was good to see you. And we did have quite a good time. The governor does know how to throw a party. So it was a great celebration. And so here is his video. The staff will run the video, and then I'll be back with you. So here we go. The governor.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to join you all virtually for this important convening. The role of higher education and training in Colorado can't be overstated, and this is a great opportunity to think about the importance of how our work can continue and we can move forward together. Each of you provide governance and oversight for not only education and workforce, but in many ways for the future of our state. I know that it's no easy feat to create a Colorado for all. We need to continue to create bridges from higher education to the workforce. Colorado leaders must be able to hire the talent they need for businesses to thrive, and Coloradans should have access to the skills they need to build great careers that support them and their families. I'm proposing we provide free training at Colorado community and technical colleges for many professions that support others. We want to help more people gain entry into industries like early childhood, education, healthcare, construction trades, fire and forestry, and law enforcement, so we can meet the needs of our communities. This is an opportunity for Coloradans and for all of us to create a bigger talent pool for our businesses and communities to draw from. Right now, there's 2 available jobs for every unemployed Coloradan. We need to think outside the box. We need to innovate our approach to higher ed and workforce development. The 4-year degree is still important, but it's not the only path to success. When it comes to training our homegrown talent, we need to look at work, experience, apprenticeships, on-the-job training, credentials, how people can gain skills. That's learners of all ages. I want to take a moment to thank the Colorado Commission on Higher Education for your creative work and the new strategic plan, Building Skills for an Evolving Economy. The Commission offers an opportunity to our institutions of higher education to guarantee that all education and training leads to a positive return on investment for every Coloradan. That kind of bold vision is exactly where Colorado needs to be and will continue to lead to a stronger workforce, a vigorous economy, vibrant communities, more opportunity for our residents. The post-secondary ecosystem needs to focus on the outcomes of education and training that matter the most to learners, paths to good jobs, economic mobility, and to measure our effectiveness by ensuring Colorado learners get a solid and strong return on investment. Skills and accumulation of skills transcend legacy barriers like age, income, and geography to support a person's educational journey. It's a time for innovation, but we should remain rooted with the pillars of accessibility, affordability, equity, and education for all. Education is at the heart of our economic success. Thank you so much for your time and lending your efforts to make Colorado more competitive and help make sure that we can open the doors of opportunity to even more people.
So thanks to the governor for those encouraging words, and also I would say even a call to action, if you will, in terms of transforming the way we do higher education. And I wanted to say a few words about education, higher education myself. It is, as you all know, it's an essential component of contemporary American society, providing individuals with the knowledge, the skills, and the credentials that they need to succeed in today's competitive job market. It's not just about getting a degree, but it's about the long-lasting positive impact it has on one's life. Most of you on this call have been through higher education or some post-secondary credential program. So let's start with the facts and the statistics. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, workers with a college degree earn, on average, 84% more over their lifetime than those with only a high school diploma. Furthermore, college graduates are less likely to be unemployed and have a lower risk of poverty. This is because higher education provides students with the critical thinking, problem-solving, communication, and workforce skills necessary to be successful in a wide range of industries. But higher education is not just about making more money. Trust me, I'm a public servant with a Stanford degree. I didn't just pursue the money. It is about empowering individuals to reach their full potential. Nelson Mandela said, "Education is the most powerful weapon with which you can change the world." Higher education provides individuals with the tools they need to make a positive impact on their communities, their country, and the world. It gives them the opportunity to be informed and active citizens, to contribute to the betterment of society, and to pursue their passions and interests. Higher education also plays an important role in personal development. College students have the opportunity to explore new interests, to make new friends, to learn valuable life and work skills, such as time management and budgeting. College is a time of self-discovery and personal growth, where students can find their voice and their place in the world. One such example is Malala Yousafzai, a young woman who stood up for education and women's rights in Pakistan, despite facing life-threatening violence. We probably all have heard her story. She's a powerful example of how education can change a person's life and in turn change the world. Malala's story is a powerful reminder of the transformative power of education and how it can help to break the cycle of poverty and oppression. So we know higher education is essential for contemporary American society. It provides individuals with the knowledge, the skills, the credentials needed to succeed in today's competitive job market, empowers them to make a positive impact on the world, and helps them reach their full potential. As the famous American philosopher Mortimer Adler said, the whole purpose of education is to turn mirrors into windows. Higher education provides individuals with the tools they need to look out onto the world and see the endless possibilities that lie ahead of them. I wanted to start with just setting our context of how important post-secondary education and higher education is for the individual, for the community, for the state, really for the world, and especially for our economic development. And so what we do, what you all do, is critical for the state of Colorado. So I wanted to thank you with that. I also wanted to say that little inspirational commentary was a product of ChatGPT. Some of you have heard of ChatGPT. This is the artificial intelligence, essentially, that has now consumed the world. I wanted to give you an example. I asked ChatGPT, produce an inspirational commentary on the value of higher education to contemporary American society using facts, statistics, quotes, anecdotes, and emotional stories. So we don't have a lot of call and response right now, but I think it did a pretty good job in a matter of less than 1 minute. And so this is a big trend on our campuses right now. And so I wanted to just talk a tiny bit about what are some of the trends that we are seeing across the country for our college campuses. ChatGPT and other platforms like it is a big one. And students are feeling pressure to compete with other students who might be using ChatGPT so that they don't get left behind. So we do have a role to play on our institutions of higher ed to preserve academic integrity. And the question then becomes, with your provost, what will our institutions do in terms of academic integrity policies to ensure that the students don't feel like they have to use it in order to compete with their other students for grades or for advancement, and at the same time, embrace a new technology like decades and decades ago, we had to embrace the calculator in our math classrooms. And so the technology is here to stay. The question is, how will we embrace it? How will we use it? How will we leverage it to make things even better in the classroom and change the way we might do business, so to speak, and instruction in the classroom? So ChatGPT, I'm going to come back to in one of the breakouts. So think about, what are your institutions already doing and what do we need to do? Not as a statewide policy, but as individual campuses. Some of the other trends that we are seeing around the country, as many of you know, I'm a member of SHEO, which is the State Higher Ed Executive Officers. And SHEO produced the document on what the trends were that they are seeing across the country. We do know on a legislative trend, we're seeing with the new Congress, we're seeing a desire to preserve free speech on campus and what that might look like. Also legislatively, promoting short-term Pell, which is the Pell grant that in this case would be eligible for short-term certificate and credential programs. So there's legislators wanting to promote that. There are some significant demographic trends across the country. I'll mention that in a little bit here, that we're seeing also in Colorado. And then from the SHEO organization, definitely, as the governor said, workforce development and the labor market, making sure that our institutions are addressing those needs. Huge K-12 teacher shortage. As a result, perhaps, I mean, we've had a teacher shortage for a while, but the pandemic certainly contributed to that. A big issue for state higher ed officers is state funding for financial aid. Of course, in Colorado, we have over $200 million that we put into state financial aid. So we're doing pretty well on that. State operating support for your institutions. And then the last one, really the top 5, the last one is that value proposition, which of course will lead us into what will be discussed, not all today, but certainly later on, which is the new CCHE strategic plan for the next 5 years. So these are some of the trends that we're seeing. And so I wanted to give you a chance to do a little bit of a breakout. And just in your breakouts, there'll be 5. We're going to randomly assign 5 of you to a room. And when you get to your room, just how has the new technology of AI, artificial intelligence, and things like ChatGPT, how is that going to have an impact, and what policies do we might be needed to address that? Also, any of those trends that might be maybe of particular interest to your institution. So like I said, the top 5 is on workforce development, K-12 teacher shortage, state funding for financial aid, state funding for operations, and the value proposition of higher education. Why should I go? And that's a big question that I think our young people are asking today. So we're going to go ahead and put you in breakouts. It's not going to be supervised. So you've got about 15 minutes here to just talk about what are the trends that you're seeing, how are you going to handle ChatGPT and others. I think we still have some people joining. So Renee, if we can put folks in the breakout rooms and just have a conversation about the trends in higher ed and maybe a little bit of focus on ChatGPT. And we'll see you back here in a few minutes. Here we go. Right. Got people coming back. It's great. Okay, looks like we're all back. Most of us, yeah, I think so. So I'm curious, and I think you can unmute yourself and just speak up if you'd like to. But I'd love to hear maybe some of the key ideas that came out of that breakout. I did realize that I didn't actually fully explain what Chat GPT is, so I hope that in your breakouts somebody did. But anyway, what are some insights and comments that you have from your breakout?
We talked about the fact that it's here to stay, and that we'll figure out how to adapt both in our institutions and in the business world. That we're going to have to figure out how to do that because it is here to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. And figuring that out is a collective, collaborative kind of experience. Is how do we figure this out? Because it will impact every single program that you have in your schools. So so it's exciting, and I think embracing it, but embracing it with a good way, I think that'll be helpful. Teresa?
We had a great little discussion about this, and want to be able to have it be used as a tool, but what are its boundaries, in terms of using it in the classroom? We felt that, the provost, the faculty really need to be the ones, involved in this, but the board needs to make sure that the faculty are engaged, and it's our role more to oversee and to ensure that these conversations are taking place, and that if policies are needed, to help establish them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And as I said, it really is it's conversations that the Council of Deans, the provosts need to be having, and should be having sooner, I think, rather than later, because the students are experiencing it now. And if you haven't experienced it, I know there's a huge wait list when you try to get on to Chat GPT. It might tell you we're too busy, try again later. I have found that if you try again in the middle of the night or something, sometimes it gets you on there. But once you have an account, you can use it, and you can put in some amazing queries into that Chat GPT. I tried to fool it, or I tried to stump it by doing some extraordinary kinds of questions, but boy, within seconds, within minutes, it comes back. So I would really encourage you to give it a try so that you know what the students are experiencing too. Who else? Insights, comments, concerns, perhaps?
So one of the things that I think, in addition to Chat GPT, if you look at the AI generated Midjourney is one of the AI generated programs that allows conceptual art. So how do we address our art programs as this emerging field comes through? How do we adjust the curriculum? And so this is going to really affect graphic designers, creatives, in addition to authenticating work. So how do we address authentication of work? And my family uses Midjourney and Upscaler to develop all of the art that goes on our digital television. So what does that mean to the art community? And how are we going to thoughtfully look at a dual use for Midjourney, AI, Chat GPT? So I think that there's two things. It's authenticating. How do faculty members, how do we keep up with the latest tools to be able to authenticate? Because the biggest piece that, we look at diversity, equity, and inclusion, but the equity piece, do students have an unfair advantage? How do faculty members determine if an unfair advantage has been used in creating something? Whether it's a novel, you can have Chat GPT continue to draft a whole novel, but how do we empower faculty and to be able to determine if an unfair advantage has happened? And then how do we teach them to embrace it. So there's kind of both sides. And so I think that that's a very tough balance.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know my brother has used one of those graphic design kinds of things, and where you can put in, like he put in a basketball player in medieval times, and what it produced was amazing. And so yeah, these are the creatives. I think is also a place where it's going to be very impactful. And there is other software that will determine, that you could use to determine if it was generated by ChatGPT or another AI platform. So then we have to invest in that as well for our instructors. I mean, there's an implication and a ripple effect, I think, throughout the whole ecosystem of higher education and beyond, as you said. Yeah. Who else? Insights, comments, concerns about any of the other trends as well? Who else? We have a lot of work to do as both trustees and certainly as the department and the Commission of Higher Education, just to stay on top of the trends and to see how Colorado is addressing some of the issues that we are seeing across the country. One of the trends, of course, that we're seeing has to do with our demographics in the state. And as you look at it just on a whole, the cabinet just had a short, not really a presentation, but just an awareness that Colorado is experiencing the slowest growth rate since 1989. And so what does that mean for us? But then, you know, as Dr. Montoya, who's on the call and put a link in the chat, we also know that when you disaggregate that data, you start to really see what is the impact on my community, on my county, and on the citizens in those counties. And right now, Mesa and Pueblo are leading the way in terms of the slowest growth rate. But if you look more closely, you might see some different trends. And so I would invite you to go. We used to have the state demographer would come and talk about that, but we decided to allow you to visit the website. It's a new, the state demographer's report was just recently posted. And so you can take a look county by county and look more specifically at what are the trends in your area that might impact your institution with higher ed. Thanks, Roberto, for putting that in there. So there's the link in the chat here. And he's alive. It's not a chat GPT that's putting that link in there. That's a live person. So, all right, let me see. I wanted to just share real quickly about some of the ways that the department is a resource to the Board of Trustees and to your institutions. I'm only going to highlight 5 key initiatives that you have the opportunity to access for funding and for opportunities for your students. And so, and I have staffers who are leading these 5 initiatives that will be able to answer some questions, and I'll give them a chance to add anything that I might miss. So the 5, I think Renee or Jimmy, if you could put that one slide up, just has those 5 on there. Can we put that slide up? I'm not seeing it, so okay. Great. So I just wanted to share with you these 5 initiatives. Most of these initiatives has come out of legislation. And so the way that it operates, of course, the CCHE really helps with developing policy for the institutions of higher ed, and also has a real role to play in terms of the financial aid, not financial aid, but our formula, the financial formula for institutions and the policies for higher ed. The department executes on both the policies and the legislation and the governor's priorities. And so we are the executive branch, so to speak. And so we execute on the things that the legislators have passed and the governor signed, and the governor's priorities, as you heard him say earlier, and then the policies that come out of some of that legislation or that are initiated through the commission. So I want to just focus on these 5. The first one is called Back to Work. This really emerged out of the pandemic, when so many people had a impact of the pandemic on their work experience. So many folks had either lost jobs or didn't want to go back to those jobs. And so this was an opportunity to really help to help people to upskill, to reskill, to maybe advance their skills. And so back to work, it was a 15, well, let's just go back to the first, wait, just go back to this slide that has the 5 on there. Is that Jimmy? Yeah, just leave it on this slide for now. So back to work was a $15 million. It was from the federal funds, part of the recovery. And we have already served about 3,000 students with this program. At nearly 1,400 new credentials have been completed as of December of 2022. 20 of our institutions, it's a mixture of institutions of higher ed and some nonprofit organizations, but so we have 20 grantees from this, and the program ends in 2024. So I think there's still opportunity to get some additional dollars and to do some I'll say recruiting or promotion of this idea that people can reskill or upskill or come back and get the skills needed to get a new job, hopefully an even better job. I don't know if is Cynthia on? Cynthia, is there something else that you want to add to back to work? Cynthia, are you on?
Hi, good morning. I am. Great. Good morning, everyone. I would just add that our institutions and our partners in general have been working really hard on this initiative. We actually have just through June 2024 before these funds sunset. So we'd love to be able to support more students across the state. And I noticed that Dr. Kim Post dropped the link to our website, which has all of the contacts and partners that we work with. If you know of anybody who may be eligible or interested in getting back and reskilling or upskilling, please share that information with them.
Great. Thank you. And stick around because I'm going to ask you the same for the next one. So that's one area where we are a resource, literally a financial resource that can help you with your enrollment. So you can actually bring people in. You get funding for them to upskill or reskill, and we do have money still to spend. So check with your folks about that. The second one I want to just highlight real quickly is finish what you started. Pardon me, finish what you started. Also has about, really, we had nearly $47 million at the beginning of this program, which started in July of 2021. We have 29 institutions of higher ed who are participating. That's almost all of them. The legislation will sunset in 2026, but you do have some variations in the grant length. Right now, we've had about 2,500 students have been served in these programs and about 238 credentials. Now, this finish what you started means if you started a degree program and did not finish, you stopped out or dropped out for whatever reason, because that happens, and it pretty much within the last 10 years, because most courses have a 10-year shelf life, you can finish that degree. Man, I wish we had teed up that video. Boy, can you offline, Cynthia? I don't know if you have that. If you can send a link to Jimmy on YouTube, Jimmy, that would be great to be able to tee that up. Sorry, I didn't think about that before, but Pueblo State College, formerly known as Pikes Peak Community College. I think it's Pikes Peak State College now. They changed their name. They created just a great video on this program, Finish What You Started. It's just a 30-second video. We've got time to show it. But it allows students to come back to your institution to finish that degree program. And oftentimes, if it's a credential program or something like that, they may stay around and complete the rest. And so we have right now about 238 credentials have been completed, but 2,500 students have been served in the program. So we're helping those students finish what they started. Cynthia, anything else you want to add for that?
I would just echo previous. We have quite a bit of funds to spend in this area, a longer time period, of course. And so we have plenty of time for students who even maybe completed 3 credits. They're still eligible for this program. And so there's plenty of time to get them in and get completed. So we'd love, again, any support in getting the word out about the program as well. And I'm looking for that video right now, so I'll get it to Jimmy as soon as I can.
Okay, great. I think you will enjoy it. It's a 30-second clip, but it really makes the point about what this program really is about. And many of the institutions, like I said, 29 institutions are already participating in this. And I do know that, some are really taking advantage of it. Okay, Megan, you said you put it in the chat for Jimmy. Jimmy, can you pull that that video up and share your screen with that video? Jimmy is our IT mastermind, and so for the department, he's been a great addition to our department. Jimmy, what do you think? Can you get that link?
Yep, give me just a moment and I will have that out for us.
All right, take a look. Not hearing video. I'm not hearing audio, but.
Finish what you started at Pikes Peak State College. Learn more at pikespeak.edu/finish.
Okay, we can stop there. You got the point. The point is that the video does a great job of showing what happens if you don't finish what you started. The guy who was shaving only half of his face, so putting on half of his shirt or one shoe. And so I think it's a really good way to help students see what that is. And those of you who are participating, the 29, I think Pikes Peak made that available and that you can brand it with your own branding. So anyway, it's a great, almost gimmicky, but really makes the point. So that's those are two of the programs. Those programs are also administered through COSI, the Colorado Opportunity Scholarship Initiative. And Cynthia is our managing director of COSI, Colorado Opportunity Scholarship Initiative, that also handles a lot of our matching scholarships and community partnerships to help students with wraparound support services and actual financial aid scholarship information. The third one I want to just highlight is the Behavioral Health Initiative Incentive Program. Many of you are already engaged with this. Initially, it was $9 million to help with the shortage area in this area. So social workers or clinical psychologists, we have a big behavioral health initiative in the state that has the legislature put a lot of money toward, that's really trying to tackle some of the things like our opioid addiction policies and our mental health issues. And so they provided $9 million to help with student financial assistance who are in those kinds of programs. We have already given $5 million to 5 institutions, and those were University of Northern Colorado, UCCS, CSU Fort Collins, Colorado Mesa, and actually University of Denver as well. We've that's 377 students who are being able to get some additional financial assistance. And the second round of funding, we have 7 applications, and those 7 will receive funding: Adams State, Mesa, Pueblo Community College, CU Denver, UCCS again, Regis, and University of Denver. So that should impact about 400 students. They'll be getting $4 million to distribute to those 7 institutions. Again, we have not only do we have this behavioral health incentive program, but we also have a designation called Healthy Minds. And that's what you're doing on campus to make sure that students have access to services for mental health. And so I think that's, is that Peter or is that Jack? I think that's Jack. Jack, is there anything you want to add to that one?
Just in general, we're happy to be able to start moving things forward, and everyone will be receiving some more updated information shortly on that as we keep receiving more information from our partners on that. So feel free to shoot me any questions afterwards if you have any.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jack. And we're hoping to get even more money as we show that this is an initiative that actually is making a difference, and we're increasing that pipeline. That's what's so important right now. And so your institutions, those already receiving and those who are in line to receive some funding, state funding. Fourth one on there is Colorado Reengaged Initiative. We call it CORE. The CORE initiative is we are the first state in the country to do this. That's our 4-year mission institutions that have a mission for a bachelor's degree or higher. They don't typically have a mission to award an associate's degree, but through this initiative, they are permitted to issue an associate's degree to students who have stopped out or dropped out. Again, for whatever reason, they have to be out for a year, and there's some other criteria, but this would allow them to earn an associate's degree from a 4-year institution. We're very excited about this. You know, as you probably know, some people who went to college, they went 3 years and they didn't finish, and they have really no way to maximize their earning potential through that degree. This way, we allow them to come back, provided they have the right amount of credits and in the right places and all the other criteria, but they will be able to earn an associate's degree based on the work that they have already done. Peter, this is you. Do you want to say anything more about that?
Sure. I think it's worth noting that the institutions that are participating in this, the 4-year institutions, are not going to be creating new courses or adding new faculty. They're not getting into the associate's degree granting business necessarily. They're not going to have associate's programs that a student can enroll in. And they took care of a lot of that in the legislation with the student eligibility requirements. So the student has to have been in a bachelor's program, earned at least 70 credits. And then, as Angie mentioned, have to have stopped out for at least 2 consecutive semesters before they can even be eligible for the program. So trying to limit the competition for students between 2-year and 4-year institutions. But we're very excited to have 7 institutions participating in this now out of about 12 that are eligible. Participation is voluntary, so we're thrilled to have such a strong showing in the first year of the program with so many institutions wanting to offer this. And they will probably award their first associate degrees come fall of the 2023 school year.
That's fantastic. And once again, this is another way to re-engage. That's why we call it that, to re-engage students. So they come back, they get their associates, and then they realize, you know, I'm just within arm's reach of getting that bachelor's. And so they can re-enroll to earn their bachelor's degree as well. In Colorado, we have nearly 700,000 Coloradans who have some college, but no degree. And so they are earning less than they possibly could. And of course, when we talk about the value proposition and we talk about return on investment, for those folks, there certainly is a very low, if no return on investment, if your highest credential is a high school diploma, even though you may have done 2 or 3 years of college. If you don't complete that credential, then you don't have anything to show for it. And so this is a way to do that and maybe reach some of those. We estimate that about 25,000 former students from the past 10 years would be eligible for this. So we could make a dent in that 600,000 to 700,000 that have some college but no degree. So we're excited about that program. And the 7 institutions that are engaging in that. Again, we're the first state in the country to do that, and others are looking to see what kind of success we have. Last but not least is our foster ed. This was, again, out of legislation, Senate Bill 8 from last year, sponsored primarily by Senator Zenzinger. This is pretty amazing. This is a higher ed support for foster youth was the name of the bill. And this provides the entire cost of attendance. That's tuition, fees, books, room and board, transportation, even can get a laptop. And if you're older and you have children, it even covers childcare. So this is an amazing program. We're trying to make sure that students know about it. Again, there's some criteria. We don't have to go into that, but you can on our website. And right now, we just implemented it in this past July. We've got about 72 students who are taking advantage of this. We have money to spend and pretty much it'll be in perpetuity. So this is a program that will really allow students who are on the margins of our society to come really back in with full force. And I remember when I announced this at a convening with foster youth and foster families, afterwards people came up and said, wait, really? This will cover everything? And students said, I thought about going to college, but I didn't think I could afford it. And are you telling me that this is going to cover the entire cost? And the answer is yes. And so, your institutions are reaching out to your communities and working with the Department of Human Services to really identify who these students are, and then inviting them to enroll in your institution. So we're very excited about this. And you could ask your institutions, what are we doing with the foster ed initiative? Because this is the way that there's money from the state and from even some from federal government that we can increase enrollment, because of course, as you know, enrollment has declined. And so this is a way to re-engage people all the way through. So all 5 of these are initiatives that actually, I think, Twyla, I think you're on. Is there anything I missed about foster ed?
Just wanted to add 2 things. One is we have hired 4 foster care student navigators. And so they will be working with each of the institutions all around the state, and they are each assigned to an institution, so they can be reached. I put into the chat their email address if you have any questions. And also, since we are such a new program, we'd really love your support on getting the word out. So thank you.
That's great. And so as you see, we have a staff who are taking the lead on these initiatives. We are at your service, so to speak, if you have questions about any of these initiatives. Of course, there's going to be lots of new initiatives that will come out of this legislative session and that will come out of the new strategic plan. And so these are ways that we can prompt the way that the institutions can then align with the governor's goals, with the commission goals, and with the trends to make sure that we are staying on top of being relevant and meeting the needs of our students. So very excited about the work that we're doing and how it might impact you. Let me just open it up right now for any questions that you might have about any of these initiatives. The staff is on to be able to answer any questions. What questions might you have? Thanks, Teresa.
Quick question. Okay.
Cara?
Oh, yeah, sure. I just have a quick question. I know Peter's still online, but I'm super interested in the core program. So the Re-Engage initiative, and I'm just curious, with that associate's degree, obviously the idea is that you don't have to reach a level as the bachelor's degree. So you're leaving with some kind of certifications that kind of got the seal of approval from the governor and well, from higher ed and from Colorado, which is exciting. I'm just curious, is that something that you said all of these initiatives also provide funds? And so is that something that you are, you're providing funds for these particular students to come back to the universities? And second of all, is there some kind of criteria that is across universities, the state colleges and universities, so that we're all kind of, so that the associate's degree, does it mean the same thing from, Western Colorado University to Adams State to CU? I'm just curious.
Okay, so in terms of funding, the core initiative is a little bit different than some of the other programs in that it's not a scholarship program, but we do have funding available to the institutions that have chosen to participate. So basically to get the program operational on their campus, we've got core operational grants just to help with implementation. There are other programs that the state and the department offer and administer that would help those students once they get that associate's degree to re-engage either at the institution where they were pursuing their bachelor's degree, or perhaps if circumstances have changed or they've moved to another Colorado institution. In terms of trying to keep the value of the associate's degree similar across different institutions, we had a working group established at the beginning of the core initiative, and they thought through some of those issues. And one of the things that they kind of agreed on was that all institutions that are participating will at least start with an Associate of General Studies degree offering. That was because it was more students would probably qualify for an AGS than they would, for example, for an AA or an AS degree. But institutions do have the option to award other associate degree types if they want to, either from the beginning or as the years progress and the program gets bigger, they have the option to award other associate's degrees. And in order to do that, they would have to meet the same requirements in terms of general ed courses, in terms of guaranteed transfer courses, that type of thing, as the two-year colleges do now for their associate's degree awards.
Yeah, so as Peter said, this is not an open door to say you can award any associates that you want to award. They really, and you know, as we continue to have the conversation around value, we know that an associate's degree does add value. And of course, it would depend on the kind of associate's degree, but even earning that degree for some people, yes, we have a shift right now toward a skills-based hiring. So it's not so much the skill as what credential you have, but the credentials still do matter in some fields of study. And it also is a way, I have to say, there are some people who that is a sense of accomplishment to essentially finish what you started in that space, but also to earn a credential that does reflect some of the work that you've done over the years that you've been at that institution. My biggest frustration, or one of my frustrations, was that we have so many people that have some college and no degree. And that does make a difference. And it can inspire a student to complete the degree that they initially sought, which is a bachelor's degree in what particular field. So, and we want to make sure that these associate's degree do add value in the marketplace as well. So we're trying to combine all of those things in workforce development, meeting the individual students' needs, making sure that they're earning a credential of value, and giving them the line of sight to perhaps complete that the bachelor's degree that they had started. So there's a lot of motivations attached to this.
Thank you. And as you know, students have moved. So is this something that is also going to be offered online?
Peter?
That would be up to the individual institutions, and we're going to be, as they start to identifying eligible students, we're going to work with institutions to help them address whether we're going to help them figure out how they can communicate with those students. So if the student has moved and maybe they were in a certain program, but the institution offers an online variation on that program, I would think that would go out as a letter along with the associate's degree, not just, hey, here's an associate's degree for your troubles, but also we can paint a picture for you of how you can come back and continue on and get that bachelor's degree that you started in. And that could be through any modality that the university offers.
That's great. Kim, I see you put something in the chat. Would you mind just sharing that verbally?
Hi there. Yeah, we meet monthly with all of the.
Could you introduce yourself, Kim?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Kim Post. I'm the Chief Student Success and Academic Affairs Officer. So we meet monthly with our provosts, our GE Council, our financial aid folks. The commission has been made aware. We also have several, if you follow us on social media, Megan, I think is online. She can drop the link to our social media feeds as well. Those things are on there as well. And then certainly through the COSI program, Cynthia and her team have been communicating all the new machinations of programs that have been out there. But I can also I'll drop my email address if anyone has additional questions.
Thanks, Kim. And so, you know, you're not, as trustees, you're not responsible to do all of the legwork and all of the work on that. We convene virtually every group on your campuses, and we're having these kinds of conversations with the appropriate staff at your institutions. But I think it's important that you know about these and that you ask the questions at your trustee meetings, like, how are we doing? Are we engaged with this initiative? And how do we make sure that we are accessing the initiatives that the department and the resources that the department has? And so this is helping. My idea is that this would help you be informed about some of the questions that you can ask, and to make sure that your institution is taking advantage of the resources that are available and the legislation that comes through. You guys have great teams. You have great presidents and chancellors. We work with them. I convene them. They're doing everything possible to make sure that your institutions are serving the communities and the students really well. And I'm really proud actually of the work that they do. Other questions about either the initiatives or legislation, or questions that we might answer about resources from the department?
Angie, this is great information. And certainly our VP of Student Affairs is very engaged. So Kim is out there making her rounds, we're very apprised of this information. But I think it's great to put it in front of us as trustees so that we can ask those questions, as you suggested, just to make sure our institutions are taking full advantage of these opportunities.
Thanks, Russell. And Russell is the chair of the Board of Trustees at MSU Denver. MSU Denver is really taking advantage of, especially like the back to work and the finish what you started, and really taking advantage of that. And we certainly appreciate your participation in these initiatives. That's why the legislature passed them. That's why we are executing on them. And we want to make sure that as many institutions as possible have access to the resources that that the state has given us, that the federal government has given us. And we are essentially a bit of a pass-through. I mean, we do run these initiatives. And so as you can see, we have the staff to do that, but it's really important that you guys participate. So thank you, Russell, for that. It's good to see you, of course. Other questions, comments, or concerns about any of the resources, initiatives, legislation?
So Angie,
yes, please.
I was just interested in, with respect to legislation, House Bill 1349 from last year. And I noted in the master plan, the reference to the bill and to that part of your efforts around a data system to support the earnings of students relative to their expenses. I didn't see anything in there relative to the part that the bill also had, which was to support a data system for the institutions to support their retention and graduation efforts. And I've been concerned that the planning group has yet to be formed around it, and that none of the, at least our institution hasn't been consulted about it, which the legislation required. So where are we on that?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. And Stephen is with UNC, of course, renowned for his leadership at MSU Denver when he was president there, and all of the great work you did there. And I see you're sporting the Bears. You got your swag on. That's good branding right there. Michael Vante, are you on the call? I'm hoping that you're on the call, Michael. Michael's our lead on 1349. Is Michael on this call?
I don't see him on the call at the moment, Angie. He may be in a vendor call about something concerning that actual bill.
Okay.
About them trying to modernize CERT.
Yeah. Ben or Renee, can you reach out to Michael and see if he can join us? And then we'll get to that, Stephen. It's actually on my list coming up next. So I've got it on here about 1349.
So we could just wait until then anyway. That's great. Thanks, Angie.
Yes. Yeah. Great. Thanks for the question. Who else? Anyone else? Insights or comments or concerns? So one of the things I want you to really know about the work of the department is that we are a resource to you. We not just in terms of financial resources, because we don't have a whole lot of that, but certainly we convene all of the departments on the campuses, and so we try to make sure that the information flow is a two-way information flow, and it's full, free, open two-way information flow. Like I said, we convene most of those folks monthly, and so if you need information, we are your source, if you will, in terms of statewide information, that we'll be able to get those to you. Teresa.
Hi, thank you so much for running this training today. I'm wondering, relative to the demographic that fewer high school students are pursuing higher education, does CDHE or any of the work that we do outreach to try to encourage more students to pursue post-secondary education?
Yeah, it's a great question, because it's really the question of the time, so to speak, because across the country, we're seeing enrollment decline. Now, typically when we've had some economic issues, when we've had recessions or whatever, enrollment has gone up because the salaries in the community were not that high. So individuals didn't really have an option. It was like, well, let me go back to school and get a degree, and that'll help me once this recession is over. But we're seeing some different trends right now, in particular because there are some salaries out there for entry-level positions that are higher than what used to be. And so a student, and I'm thinking of our traditional 18 to 22-year-old student, might opt to say, why should I go to college and get this debt when I can go to work for the next 4 years and make some money? And we call that the opportunity cost. It's different for different groups of people, if you will. Not everybody can get highest paying jobs. And so there is that reality in the world, in the marketplace. And so there are many students, and in fact, we have seen that decline in enrollment from our traditional, if you will, 18 to 22-year-olds. In fact, it's now only about half of our high school graduates in the state of Colorado who are pursuing any post-secondary option, whether that's an early credential or a degree program. So yes, there's a lot of outreach. I have actually spoken to the 25 superintendents of the top 25 by enrollment school districts to talk about ways that we as a department can interact with them. We finally, as a result of some legislation last year, we do have some outreach members. We only had one for a long time, and he covered the whole state, put over 35,000 miles on his car. And now we have some outreach staff who are working with our high schools to help students recognize that the value, first of all, of post-secondary options, the cost and how important it is to complete FAFSA or CAFSA for those students who are ineligible for FAFSA. And that there are opportunities like through COSI and through different of these initiatives that they can actually have some financial assistance to complete. So we're doing our best to do that. I know that you all, the institutions, are doing the same in your communities to try to build those partnerships with the high schools. That's going to be even more critical going forward. So that's another great question the trustee can ask. What are we doing to address the declining enrollment issues on our campus, and how are we partnering with our local school districts to really try to have a value proposition that matters for the students to come? And then I was going to say even later, then we also have to recognize that there are lots of adult populations that are looking to reskill, upskill, and how do we create the programs that's attractive to them, so that they can and they want to come back and get, whether it's a short-term credential or a degree program. So there's a lot of work that's happening both at CDE and CDHE and at your institutions. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Teresa. I see that Michael has joined us. Stephen, do you mind? Could you ask your question? Michael, you're with us, I think. So can you?
I am. Hello, all.
Yeah, great.
Thank you. So House Bill 1349, which provided for some data elements for higher ed, and really had two pieces associated with it. One, a sort of a student success piece that would be institutional use to help improve student success and retention rates. And the second being the part that would help support the larger effort around return on investment. And so the question is, where are we on? I saw the reference in the master plan to the larger, the bigger piece. Did not see any reference to the piece that would support the student success and retention piece for the institutions. So where are we on that? And where are we on the appointment of the advisory committee, which has been sort of sitting out there for some period of time?
No, thanks so much for the question. Really appreciate it. For those of you who I don't know, I'm Michael Vante. I'm the Chief Performance Officer and Senior Director of Research and Data Governance at the Department of Higher Ed. Great to be with you all this morning. To the question about 1349, yes, we've been working on implementation of that bill, and so thankful for that support to be able to dive in, as you say, into the measures of student success and workforce success and what that means, and being better able to define all of those different things. Lots of different buckets related to the 1349 work. So I'll focus on those, the buckets related to those new measures of success and the data necessary to be able to kind of process them. So as you mentioned, yes, our commission did task us with setting up a technical working group. So to be able to dive into these questions in a lot more detail and being able to make sure we have the subject matter experts to be able to inform as we think think about new measures of success, as we think about the data necessary to calculate them, how do we best do that? And so we did have a nominations form to be able to get people to serve on that committee, and being able through our commission to be able to make appointments. Right now, I think we're still waiting on some guidance from our commission in terms of being able to make appointments to that technical working group. Very much look forward to working with our commissioners to kind of get that rolling and to be able to stand up the technical working group. I think we're also thinking about some additional resources that we can bring to maybe help support that technical working group. We're still figuring that out again with our commissioners. And so I think being able to get that final directive from our commissioners will be really important for us to stand up the technical working group and continue all of those conversations. I'll also say, in terms of a few of the other buckets related to 1349, going down into some data weeds and modifying data systems and things like that, we are, with the department, is continuing to work on that. So thinking about our SURDS system, our Student Unit Record Data System, which is the mechanism by which we get lots of wonderful data from all of your institutions to do lots of state reporting, federal reporting, the list goes on. And being able to modernize that system, making it easier for data to kind of flow between us and to validate data, make sure that the data are more timely, and thinking about the ways in which we can support institutions in looking at certain and unlocking some of their data, even to be able to lift up some of those measures and to be able to hopefully help equip institutions better in using their own data to help meet the goals that we're all talking about here. So I hope some of that is helpful. Very happy to kind of talk more too.
So it doesn't really answer my question about where are we on the part about the student retention and success piece that the institutions want to use to be able to identify when students are having difficulty and to be able to go in and remediate those problems. And there are a bunch of us that really think we don't have to create a whole new system. The Cal State system is out there for us to get. We have institutions that are already using it. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Why don't we move forward? And the last piece is the bill required consultation with the institutions, each one individually. And so where are we on those?
Sure, no, very much appreciate that. And I think the question that you're getting to is how we unlock some of those data, the visualizations maybe, or the different measures and metrics that something like there's the Cal State model that is available that I know some institutions have deployed. There's also the Post-Secondary Data Partnership, or PDP, through the National Student Clearinghouse. Some of you might be familiar with that. Just different methods of being able to leverage data and visualize data in a lot of different ways. And so I think what we want to do is to be able to make sure that we, CDHE, are getting the data that we need to help on those fronts and to be able to deploy those types of things at institutions. I will say, you know, to get down into the weeds a little bit, I think there are pros and cons to each different approach that institutions might take in terms of visualizing data and what that means. In order to kind of get at some of these measures that we're talking about, it really is individual student level data and connecting that across kind of the post-secondary system and the workforce system to be able to yield those results. I think something like the Cal State model, at least we've had some conversations with institutions who have deployed the Cal State model and being able to understand that it really is looking more at aggregate level data, and it really doesn't get down to that individual level data, especially linking across and being able to think about the longitudinal nature of data. And so that's a little bit of a weedy thing, but I think we want to support institutions however we can to do what they think is best and unlocking those insights. For us, it really is just modernizing our data systems, being able to have as much data and valid data as we can to be able to really think about a statewide solution while also supporting institutions in the work that they are doing, and being able to be on the same page with data definitions and methodologies and all of those things too. So I think a lot of that work is still to come. Again, data modernization stuff we are moving on, and that's always a long process of figuring out how to do that. But we have some good progress there, and really just waiting for our commissioners to be able to give us more direction about the technical working group, because the bill does say that the commission shall set the new measures with the technical working group and all of those things. So it's really waiting for them and their leadership to be able to give us a little bit more direction on kicking all of that off.
Yeah. And Stephen, I do invite you to, offline to have those conversations with Michael and also with the commissioners. And both our chair and vice chair of the commission could not be with us today. And so they can't respond directly to that today, but they certainly are moving the commission in that direction of executing and implementing 1349. And we're still in process. So we're trying to move as quickly as we can, but there's a lot of moving pieces, as you can imagine, on something as big as this one is. So we will definitely keep you informed on that.
Yeah.
In fact, Michael was just meeting with the data group. We stole him away from that meeting. So go ahead, Michael.
That's what I was going to say. Is we've had some of those conversations directly with institutions, and we'll continue to have those. And this morning we have our quarterly DAG meeting, so our data advisory group, which was all of the wonderful institutional research representatives and other data representatives from the institutions. I'm probably going to talk to them a little bit. I'll get back over to them and talk about 1349 a little bit more, just to continue those conversations and being able to make sure that we have their perspectives and being able to make sure we're all on the same page.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for slipping away to answer that question.
I probably will run back over there to them,
Yes.
but if any other questions come up, always very happy to talk more.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you all.
Oh, you bet. So what I'd like to do now is give you a chance to talk to one another. Once again, we're going to do a little breakout room. We're switching the agenda a little bit here. You'll have about 15 minutes to just have a conversation about enrollment, a conversation about if there are some additional questions that you want to ask us as the department about resources, and how you can really provide access to these opportunities for your students. Like what maybe there's some great things that you're already doing that we don't even know about, but so if we can kind of focus that conversation, have a conversation amongst yourselves. Again, it'll be randomized, about 5 to a room. So take a look at the demographics that we just talked about, that the fact that we're seeing the slowest increase, slowest growth rate since 1989. 39 counties have what's a decline in population. Mesa and Pueblo are leading the way in that decline. We have less high school students overall because of the birth rates and where we are. And then students are choosing not to go, in large numbers, not to go to post-secondary. What can we do about that? So let's have a quick conversation about that. And how do you leverage resources from the department as well? Okay, Renee, Jimmy, breakout rooms. Let's go. 15 minutes. 35, 10:40. Do people have to press that join button to go to their rooms? I'm not seeing that.
It looks like you can go under that ... more, and it'll take you to join breakout room.
Not are people in breakout rooms?
Yes, they are.
Okay, all right. So I was last time I was assigned to one. It doesn't look like I've been assigned to one. So
I didn't assign co-host this time.
Gotcha. But I could join one if I want to?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna pick one.
In between them as you want.
What's that?
You should be able to jump in between anyone you want on
Gotcha.
as a host.
I'll join this. Join room 3.
Where we at?
Mark, we cut you off there, but
That's okay. I'll
Getting-
get over it.
yeah. Sure, there we go. Thanks, Mark. Am I muted? I think.
No, you're good.
Okay, thanks. Wow, that
I'm here. Go ahead.
we had a good conversation in my breakout room. I hope you all did. I was also reminded that the governor's vision really for high school to college, that, you know, blurring the lines, if you will, and there's a whole commission right now, a workforce on blurring the lines, the big blur. It was from House Bill 1215 last year, and it really is looking at K-12 and higher ed and the workforce. But the governor has a vision that every high school student will graduate with a high school diploma and a credential of value in the workforce. And so, so we're trying to really make that push. We have some early colleges that already have high school students who are graduating from high school with an associate's degree. And so we're moving toward that. We have a lot of P-TECs, which are from the school district, the K-12 school district, that has all of those credentials of value and workforce partnerships. And students are leaving high school with career and technical education credentials that get them right into the workplace. And so what's important is that they also have a line of sight toward the next credential of value that they may want to pursue. But all of this is really coming back to what we know of the strategic plan, the direction of the commission, which is really looking at what is that return on investment. Now, we're not going to go into the strategic plan today, but I do want to bring your attention to the fact that there will be in the spring, this spring, there will, so look for your, hold on your calendar, but there will be a kind of a webinar event that the CTN and CCHE will be hosting that will take a really deep dive into the strategic plan and the pillars of the strategic plan. You should have a link to the strategic plan. It's off of our website. You should be able to find that. Maybe if somebody's listening, they can put it in the chat. But so it would be good for you to get comfortable with that strategic plan and what the purpose of it and the vision of it is, so that when we have this event in the spring, we'll be able to have the right questions and be able to have the conversation that will take us really deep, because this will be guiding the work of the department and ultimately the institutions for the next 5 years. And so, so I really invite you to take a look at the document. I'm waiting for someone to put the link in the chat, that if you could look at that document and really get comfortable with it, and then this spring we'll take that deep dive. I'm excited to do that with you. That really informs not only the work of the department, in addition to the work that we do, but also it will impact the institutions, because it helps to also inform the funding allocation formula based on some of these measures and metrics of success. So I see Ben put it in there. Thank you. So if you haven't looked at it yet, please make sure you download that, get comfortable with it, so that we can have a real robust conversation this spring as we begin to implement the new strategic plan for higher education going forward. And it aligns with the governor's vision. It aligns with all of the trends that we're seeing around the country, and the future, if you will, of higher education and the whole ecosystem for the state. It's important that we are at the forefront and that we're making the right decisions for the students and for the institutions and for our communities. So I want to thank you for your time so far. We are going to take a break. So those of you who might have some needs, you can take care of those. And then we'll be back in 15 minutes. So you got a 15-minute break. When we come back, we will be hearing from the Attorney General's office to talk about some of the other responsibilities of the boards of trustees. And I will be introducing Mr. Michael McMaster of the Attorney General's office. And so if you would, please come back at 11 and we will get into some of the responsibilities of boards of trustees as it relates to the Attorney General's office. That's the charge that we all have. So we'll see you in 15 minutes. It's 10:45. See you in 15. Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. And if you can, please go ahead and turn on your video cameras, and we're going to get started with the last hour. We just have one more hour. We tried to make this short, sweet, but still chock full of information for you. And we are, let me see here, we are very excited about the next part of this meeting, which is hearing from the Attorney General's office and Mr. Michael McMaster. He is our primary contact on educational legal questions and issues. And I believe also essentially is the legal representative, so to speak. I know each of you have your own legal counsel, but he also serves in that capacity, if you will, for the public institutions of higher education. Certainly the department and relies on the AG's office for certain issues that we may have. And so he's new to the position, and we appreciate that we have this moment to hear from him and for him to get an idea of what the trustee community is like. This is part of our obligation. Our statutory obligation is to make sure that the trustees understand their role and responsibilities as it relates to the institutions of higher education. And so, Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you for being here. Welcome to the Institutions of Higher Ed trustee community.
Great. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. If you can bear with me for 1 second, I'm going to pull up a presentation here. All right. I think that's working. If it's not, somebody holler at me. But yes, so my name is Michael McMaster, and I'm with the Colorado Attorney General's office. And a quick note before I jump in, I know that we have regents and trustees, commissioners and governors, but to make it easy for our discussion, I'm going to be using the generic umbrella term board member, which applies to all of you. Unfortunately, there's no secret loophole there, but I just want to keep it easy for our discussion. And we have just a few topics to discuss this morning. I want to say I am acutely aware that I am the one that is standing between you and your Friday afternoon, so I will try to keep this brief. And so generally speaking, all members of statutorily created boards and commissions must receive an annual training on a variety of topics. And the primary topics that we're going to cover here today are conflicts of interest, Colorado's open meetings law, Colorado's open records law, which some of you may have heard of as referred to as CORA. And this statutory training mandate also covers several other areas that are specific to your individual institutions. So we won't be covering all of them for a couple of reasons. First, it's really not practical given the number of different institutions that we have represented here today, because those policies and practices and institutional missions, those can vary across those your respective institutions. And second, your institution may have different legal counsel, as was just mentioned. So the Attorney General's office by statute represents all public institutions, but how that representation is accomplished can vary. Some institutions may have their own in-house counsel, and they are designated as special assistant attorney generals. I saw on our list, I think we've got David Fine from Metro and Jason Johnson from CSU. Those are just two examples. But some of the other schools are served directly by our office, depending on your school. So it may be me or one of my colleagues in the higher education unit. And if you're new to this, you may have met your legal counsel, or I suspect you may soon. But if you haven't and you have a legal concern, I want to offer this. I want to make this offer, which is that to never hesitate to reach out to our office. No matter your institution, we will direct you to the right person to address your concern. My information will be included at the end. And the reason I say that, and I know that some of you are lawyers yourselves, but you probably know that it is better to provide legal advice proactively on the front end of an issue, as opposed to the back end of the issue when our options may be limited. So I say all that to say that we are here to support you, and we want to provide you the necessary legal advice that you need to do your job. So with all that said, let's move to our first topic, and that is your duties and how to avoid conflicts of interests. Now, a fiduciary is someone who is required to put the interests of the people they serve above their own interests. And in this case, you serve the people of Colorado and your respective institution. A conflict can arise where there's a possibility that your personal interests will interfere with the public's interests. So that's why it's important for you to understand what your duties are, because we, number one, want to make sure you comply with the law. And second, we want to avoid the possibility of any personal liability that you may have if you breach your duties. So let's talk about what those duties are. As board members, you have two primary duties. It's the duty of care and the duty of loyalty. So the duty of care requires that you are an active participant in the affairs of the board. You simply can't skate by. You must be reasonably informed on the matters that you are deciding upon, and that you need to act in a responsible and prudent manner. What does this look like? Well, regular attendance at board meetings is a good place to start. You are required to exercise your independent judgment. So, for example, you cannot rely on ChatGPT to make your decisions for you. You really do have to exercise your independent judgment there. It also requires that you seek out the necessary information that you need to make your decisions. The duty of care standard, it allows for the fact that you may necessarily rely on information that is supplied to you by your institution's administration and their staff. However, you shouldn't hesitate to ask that the board be provided with additional information if you believe that the information supplied is insufficient to inform your decision. Now, the duty of care doesn't include several things, right? It doesn't include, and as a board member, you are not expected to exercise executive responsibility or run the day-to-day operations of your institution. So, for example, you are not personally responsible for the executive decisions of the president or their appointees, but you may be responsible for the selection and evaluation of that president. And with regard to your duty of care, I want to suggest or advise you to exercise caution when you're acting as an individual. You want to be careful to separate your personal views and actions from that of the board and other members. So, for example, if you're presenting at a conference and you think a particular college policy is a good idea, you are certainly free to say so. But you want to avoid holding yourself out as a representative of the whole board. And you want to avoid holding your views out as that of the board's, unless, of course, the board has voted on that particular issue. But assuming that they haven't, you want to keep those two roles separately. Lastly, I also want to note that the duty of care is not a duty to be perfect. When your board acts as a body, even if a board policy, decision, or action ultimately proves to be unwise, you as members will be protected from individual liability if you acted in good faith, with independent and informed judgment, and in the reasonable belief that your action and the board's action was in your institution's best interest. So with that brings me to the next duty, which is the duty of loyalty. And what the duty of loyalty means here is that boards must exercise the board's authority in a way that they reasonably believe to be in the best interests of the institution. And as we were just talking about, that's distinct from your own personal interests or even the interests of other entities or other persons. So in order to comply with your duty of loyalties, you should avoid actions that harm the institution, and you should also avoid using your position to further your own personal interests. So with those two duties in mind, let's talk about a few different conflicts of interests. And this here is the most important one to discuss today, and that is improperly obtaining an economic benefit. For context here, this is the only mandatory conflict of interest that you must avoid as a matter of law. It is a violation of Colorado statute, and it can lead to legal liability. The rest of the conflict of interests that we're going to discuss after this, which are found in Colorado's Code of Ethics, they're permissive in nature, but still strongly recommended. So although you may not be subject to the same type of legal liability, you and your institution can still end up on, let's say, the front page of the Denver Post, or worse yet, trending on Twitter. So with regards to this statute, what does an improper economic benefit look like? So one potential example here is, imagine that you and your board are voting to approve a new football stadium, and you are also the general partner of the construction firm that will build that stadium. That is a direct conflict of interest, and that is absolutely the type of thing that you in your role here should avoid. So if such a conflict arises, there are some best practices that you should consider. First, note that potential conflict on the record, and also your recusal. So you want the record to reflect that you acknowledge the conflict and that you've recused. And in this context, recusal means that you do not participate in even the deliberations as well as the vote on that particular issue. And if you happen to be meeting in person, I encourage you to physically recuse if possible. So for example, as the board is discussing this particular issue, note the conflict on the record, get up and go and sit where the public is sitting. You really want to draw as strong of a line as possible to show that you are not participating in this particular decision. In avoiding this conflict, I also recommend that you treat close family members as the same as yourself. So in the prior example with the football stadium, it really doesn't help you out if the construction company is owned by your spouse. That's going to have a very similar effect as if you owned the construction company as well. There is one exception that I think you should be aware of with regards to the economic benefit conflict of interest, and that's the so-called rule of necessity. There's two elements here. One is that your individual participation would be absolutely necessary to achieve a quorum or otherwise enable the board to act, and that you've made an appropriate disclosure of that conflict. This is a rare occurrence for a couple of reasons. First, it is hopefully uncommon that you will actually have a conflict in the first place. And second, it's rare that a single vote will be absolutely necessary for board action. In practice, if a conflict does arise, it's simply better to postpone the meeting until more members are available. But if it is truly unavailable, this exception has two procedural requirements. And before I jump into those, I want to first say that this is really if you find yourself in this situation, this is a great opportunity to consult with your assigned legal counsel. We would be more than happy to help you with these procedures, and which I assure you, you want to make sure you get right. So as we talked about before, it may be someone in my office, it may be me, or you may have someone in-house, but definitely this is the type of situation that you want to involve your legal counsel on. For this exception to apply, the two procedural steps are that you provide a written statement to the Secretary of State, and that immediately before the vote, you make a statement summarizing the conflict on the record. Following this procedure provides you with a safe harbor and affirmative defense to any potential liability. Hopefully, you will never need it. So as I noted at the beginning, there's some conflicts that are not strictly speaking binding on you, but they are binding on state employees. So for that reason, you are still strongly recommended to follow them. One such conflict here involves gifts, and I think that you should avoid gifts which have a market value of over $53, and that's especially true if the gift would tend to cause a reasonable person to act in any way that is not impartial, or a reasonable person would understand that it is a reward for official action that they've taken. An example here might be if you are, again, voting to approve a football stadium, and in this scenario, you have no ownership interest in the construction company. But after that stadium has been approved, the construction company offers to give you a new car. You should not accept that car. That's a type of gift that would violate this statutory provision. And I promise you, it simply won't be worth it. Similarly, in the course of some of your duties, you will likely be exposed to some confidential information. You should safeguard that confidential information, and you should not use that confidential information for your personal benefit. And so I'll note here that while this provision is only recommended, not strictly speaking binding on you, you will likely encourage information that is confidential under other laws, such as FERPA or HIPAA or other employment laws, and those will be mandatory. So all the more reason to make sure that if you do encounter confidential information in your role, that you make sure that you safeguard that information. And lastly, this executive order that I've put up here, this executive order expands on that economic benefits prohibition that we just talked about. And this does apply to all state employees. And again, while it's not strictly speaking binding on you, you really don't want to find yourself arguing in court that the contract awarded to your brother-in-law was not an actual benefit to yourself, just to him. That's the type of situation that's not going to end well regardless of the outcome. So this provides, I think, a good guidance to make sure that you adhere to your duties of care and duties of loyalty and avoid these potential conflicts of interests. So again, they're very strongly recommended. And I think that you'll find yourself well served by complying with these. So let's move on to our next topic. Let's talk about the open meetings law. The quote here is from the legislative declaration for the open meetings law. As you can see, the overriding concern here is governmental transparency. And for our purposes today, what that means for you is that all board meetings are public. They must be open to the public. And if meetings are what are public, it's natural for you to ask what exactly counts as a meeting. And to answer this, I think it's worth looking at the definition from the statute closely here. The criteria for a meeting are that it is a gathering of 2 or more board members who are discussing public business or taking formal action, and that it is either in person, by telephone, electronically, and that includes email and text, or by other means of communication. And when you put all those things together, I think the bottom line here is that whenever 2 board members are communicating regarding public business, they are in a meeting for the purpose of the OML. And I want to emphasize this point for you here because it may not be immediately obvious that an email or text message between 2 members of your board can constitute a meeting, but that is in fact exactly what it means. And one quick note here for those of you that have experience in local government, you may notice that the number of board members is lower. For local governments, it takes 3 members to constitute a meeting. For state entities, it is just 2. So not every single interaction between a board member is a public meeting. The law recognizes that we are human beings and that we live in the real world. Both of these examples are not a meeting under the OML. First is a chance encounter or social gathering where the discussion of public business is not the central purpose. And the second is email communications that do not relate to the substance of public business. So with regards to the first example there, that might manifest in a chance encounter at Starbucks between you and another member of your board. That is not a meeting. That's not something that needs to give you concern. Likewise, if you and a fellow board member have children, they're on the same soccer team, fear not, soccer practice has not been transformed into a public meeting. With regards to the second example, how this might play out is emails between you and other board members where you're making travel arrangements for the next board meeting. Those particular emails are not a public meeting. But do be careful here, because if in that same email, you also discuss how you plan to vote during that upcoming meeting, that would cross the line and become the public's business and create a public meeting. So the reason why it's important to know what is or is not a public meeting is that it triggers additional requirements. And under the statute, one of those requirements is notice. For public meetings where a majority or a quorum of the board is expected to be in attendance, or a meeting regardless of that attendance at which a formal action occurs. Those public meetings require notice. And compliance with this notice requirement is especially important when your board does take a formal action, because if a court finds that notice was not given or that it was inadequate, the court will invalidate the board's action. So for our purposes today, for this audience, I'm not going to unpack what full and timely notice means. By and large, your administrative staff will be taking care of this. But for our purposes today, know that notice must be sufficient to provide information that the public can attend, and that that notice must be at least 24 hours in advance of the meeting, or 24 hours notice is generally required. If you really want to nerd out in this area of law, please feel free to contact me afterwards, and we can dive deep into this. All right. An additional requirement, if you do have a public meeting, are that minutes of the meetings must be taken and promptly recorded, and that audio of the meetings must also be recorded. And these records of your public meetings must be kept by the institution. Like with the notice requirement, we don't really need to dive into all of the nitty-gritty today. It's just enough for you to know that this is a legal requirement that you and your boards must comply with. The limited exception to public meetings requirement is known as what's known as executive session. There are limited circumstances under which you may enter executive session, and there are limited things that you can do during executive session. The key word here is limited. So the requirements for executive session are that your board must approve entering executive session by a 2/3 vote. And a quick note here, this is also another excellent place where you should consult with your assigned counsel about calculating the voting membership of your board. Some of your boards have non-voting members, and that can affect how we calculate that number. So there's another instance in which making sure you loop in your legal counsel is a very good idea. And once you have that approval, you are still limited into the topics that you can discuss in executive session. And these limited topics that are permitted in executive session are fairly narrow. This here is a list of the most common topics that you will probably encounter as you serve on your board. And legal advice is probably the most common of this limited list here. And it's really important to know, though, that you cannot use executive session to speak privately just because a topic is controversial or because it may upset the students or the faculty. You cannot use executive session because you don't want the other institutions to know what your school's plans are. You really are limited into the topics that you can discuss during executive session. It has a very limited role. And there is a process for both entering and exiting executive session. And we've laid out some of the details here on this slide where, you must make the announcement in advance and cite the legal basis. During executive session, you should stick to only that topic that was announced. You cannot take formal action. You cannot conduct a vote or straw poll while you're in executive session. You really have to keep it limited to that narrow topic that was announced at the beginning. After executive session, if you are going to take a vote, the board should engage in discussions or otherwise summarize the issue before proceeding to that vote. If it was for the purposes of legal advice, you can even have your board's attorney make a statement affirming that it was a privileged discussion. And there's a separate requirement to keep executive session discussions recorded, and those must be maintained for 90 days. All of this is to say, if your board knows that it needs to be entering into executive session, please reach out to your assigned attorney, whether it's me or one of your in-house attorneys, to help you with this process. Oftentimes, we will provide you with a specific script and very specific instructions for entering executive session. And we really hope that you do contact us for that purpose. All right, finally, let's talk about open records. And you may have heard people talk about the Colorado Open Records Act or refer to it as CORA. For your context, this is our state's version of FOIA, which is the federal counterpart. The public policy here in Colorado is that public records are available to the public. Just like we discussed with the open meetings law, the core concern here is governmental transparency. We simply do not get to conduct the people's business in secret. Even if that's what we want to do, we simply can't. And what CORA applies to are what the statute defines as writings. And it defines what a writing is in an exceptionally broad way. And you can really dig into the definition that's here, but my advice is to generally assume any document or tangible thing is a writing for the purposes of CORA. If you're trying to avoid CORA requirements, assuming something isn't a writing is not the best way to go. So let me say it that way. And when a writing is a public record, or I should say a public record is any writing that is made, maintained, or kept by the board or its members and used in the performance of a public function or involving the receipt of public funds. And it's the second prong here that is probably what's most important to you. If one of you sends an email addressing an issue that is before your board, that email is a public record, even if you've used your personal email account. However, if you send an email regarding your personal work or family, that is not a public record and therefore not subject to CORA. The same is true with text messages. So just like we talked about text messages in the context of open meetings, it's important to keep in mind with regards to CORA and public records. Your text messages may become a public record if you're discussing public business. Once something is a public record, it is then available for public inspection. And anyone in the public can get it or get a copy. Members of the public don't have to show a specific need or even a reason for why they want to read it. They are simply entitled to view that record. And I think here it's worth noting that there are a fair number of lawsuits over obtaining public records because the statute allows for recovery of attorney's fees. So that means that there are lawyers, that there are many lawyers that are willing to file these types of lawsuits because they know they will get paid if they win. And this was put in the statute, I believe, to reinforce the underlying policy that the public is entitled to view these documents, and it is the business that you conduct on behalf of the institution is public business. So it really is a core transparency value that underlies both of these open public laws. So I will say with, one word of warning, public records do have a habit of finding their way into the public eye. So as you're writing emails or something similar, I would assume that those can end up in the news. So please exercise your judgment in doing so. And with that, I have ended early, which I hope is a good thing, given that it is almost Friday afternoon. I'm happy to field questions. And if not, I have my contact information there for you to follow up if you think of questions later on.
Michael, this is Angie. I want to thank you for this presentation. It's always, each time I see a presentation like this, I always, sometimes even shake my head that there's just a lot of that we need to make sure that we do our due diligence with. I did have a question, Michael, just about the duration. How long do you have to keep and maintain documents for those potential core requests?
So core itself doesn't have a document retention policy. There are other requirements with regards to document retention, and that's gonna vary depending on what the documents are and what the entity is. So I would say if you have a specific question in mind, let's touch base offline, and I'm happy to answer that. But for the purposes of core, it doesn't contain a specific document retention policy.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I would like to chat with you about that, especially for our board meetings or our CCHE, the commission meetings. How long do we have some of those going back at least as far as 1985, because 86 is when I was on the docket for one of those meetings. We have a couple of questions. Teresa, let's go with you first, and then Russell.
Mike, great job.
Actually, you asked my question. I wanted to know how long we had to retain the records.
Okay, there you go. Russell?
Yes, Mike, this was a great presentation. I'm starting my second 4-year term as a trustee, and I cannot hear this content too many times. It is so important because it's so different than anything that I've encountered with other boards that I serve on. So really good stuff and presented very well. My question to you is, you use the terminology public business. So can you say more about what public business is and is not?
Yeah, the general guideline here is the business that's being conducted by the board. So these are issues or matters that you are discussing or actions that you're considering in your role as a board member. That's going to include issues or matters that have to do with your respective institution as well. It's a little bit hard because there's not going to be a bright line rule that I can give you. But what you really want to be thinking about is this discussion I'm having, or is this document I'm writing, is it about the board or the institution that I'm serving, or is this about something, does it pertain to my personal life? And, in that regard, I really would recommend that you try to keep a firm line between those things. Like if you're going to be sending an email about, an issue that the board is going to be considering next month, avoid also including in the email your vacation plans, just so that you're not kind of commingling those two concerns or considerations. So I know that was kind of a vague answer, and if you have a specific concern in mind, I want to make sure we answer that. But right now is not the best place to address like your specific concern, but we'll make sure we can. But I hope that gives you a little bit of extra guidance.
That's helpful. Let me just ask one other quick question. So it need not be around actions or decisions. It can include discussions.
Absolutely.
Okay. No, that's helpful. Thank you.
That's really, really broad, especially when it comes down to just two members.
That's right.
And this is something that we've not say struggled with, but we've had to continue to kind of reaffirm that, yes, we're talking about just two people. If the content of your discussion is really around the actions that the board might be taking, that is a meeting. And so except like Michael said, if you happen to run into somebody at Starbucks, even then, I think, right, Michael, if you really get into more of the specifics, if now you sit down with that person and you're discussing the contents of the meeting, that then becomes a meeting. If you happen to be standing in line and you just say, hey, it's going to be a hot topic next week, whatever, I don't think that's a meeting. But certainly as soon as you start to get into the details of it, I think it becomes a meeting, right, Michael?
That's right. And I will say, this is another reason to just to draw careful boundaries, because if you run into a fellow board member at Starbucks and you start discussing something on the agenda for the next meeting, you are now in a public meeting. And while the notice requirement may not apply, what is true is that the public is entitled to attend your meeting, even if it is you and a board member at in line at Starbucks. And so that can create kind of an unusual, or perhaps an unusual circumstance that I think all of us would probably just rather avoid.
Yes. I wouldn't advise running away from one another, but
yeah.
But just
And I do want to say, I don't say all this to scare you or prevent you from having a collegiate relationship with your fellow board members. All of those things are important. But it is to remind you that when you are having you want to confine your discussion of board business to those board meetings. And it's not merely about following the rules. I really do think it's important that we respect the transparency in government that is kind of the theme that underlies both OML and Cora.
Thanks for that, Michael. Anyone else have a question for Michael while we have him live with us? Other questions? Go ahead, Teresa.
I just have a point of clarification here. I heard that just discussing history or requesting an agenda item or something, not discussing the substance of the agenda item, are fine. And that I heard that last year there was some clarification in statute or whatever that expanded that understanding. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so that was the statutory site that I had in the presentation about the emails that don't pertain to the substantive issues of board discussion. And my example there was arranging travel to the next board meeting, right? So it does that provision recognizes that there's just some logistical things that have to happen that aren't subject to the same concern that we have about board members maybe using email to discuss not how are you getting to the meeting, but discussing how are you going to vote in the meeting. And that's, I think, the distinction that is drawn by that statute.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah. And here's the good thing, Michael is he's our point of contact on these kinds of issues. And so Please make sure that if you do have questions that you ask, you can obviously ask your own general counsel at your institution, but also Michael is available to the public institutions of higher ed and also to us. And so you could also route questions through us and we can get them to Michael as well. But he's our new point person, primarily because UNC stole the last point person. I'll say stole, but Jackie, right? Jackie.
Yeah, Jackie Rich Fredericks, yes.
Yes, she was in your role and now she's working up at UNC. So anyway,
we made her an offer she couldn't refuse.
Yes, absolutely you did. Yes, absolutely. So I want to thank Michael for being here and joining us in person and providing such a great overview of what our responsibilities are as members of trustees, boards of trustees. And again, if you have questions, you can route them through us or go directly to Michael. He had his contact info there. And so once again, thanks, Michael. And that really does bring us to the conclusion of our time together. Don't leave me yet. It's been, I think it's been really a remarkable morning of discussion and information. I know we have a lot of information to give you, and some of it we just have to kind of download. And so I hope you didn't tire too much of my voice, and I hope the breakout sessions also were of value and that the whole meeting was of value and beneficial for you today. It is obvious that post-secondary education is really a key component to strengthening the future of Colorado and all Coloradans in the work that we do with our communities and our lives in the state. I want to thank everyone who was involved in assembling this, and most of all for you all and your dedication to your institutions and to the people of Colorado. I really do believe that now more than ever, we must renew and revisit our value proposition. We must ensure that we're collaborating, and even more, because I know you already do, but even more with industry partners, that we maintain a lens of equity, the success of all students, and that we meet the new and different needs of our students. It is a large task. You have great big work ahead of you to make sure that your institutions continue to move in that direction and that we are meeting those needs. I want you to know that it's our deepest desire that we all serve well and serve together. And please know that the Department of Higher Education is here to serve with you. So please use us. We do have resources. We collect a lot of data. We have a lot of convenings. And so if there's information you need or you want to share, please make sure that you can direct those through me, and we will get them to the right divisions of our department. And we are here to really serve the state and to serve with you to making sure that our post-secondary education and our institutions of higher ed are delivering on the vision and the needs of our students. So thank you. I'm giving you a little extra time here, so can't hurt. But do have a great weekend. It's Friday, so have a great weekend. Do something enjoyable. And again, thanks so much for your time this morning. And we wish you all the best. Hope this was beneficial to you. Thanks you.